All right, I've got two questions that are related to each other that I'm going to read to you. Um, so the first is from Kit Shafer, who said, I'm curious about what drew you to finally putting your name on your book. You showed us your career in mountain, but what pushed you over that hurdle of finally saying, enough, it's my time? I love both your talks. They're really helpful, and they help me beef up my characters and myself. So it's very interesting. This has been a lifelong process for me to get myself to be willing to be visible. And I talked about how, in fact, it wasn't my idea. I think I talked about this in London, that putting my own name on my own book didn't occur to me. It was my publisher's idea. So I was interviewed for the self-publishing show. And when Micah, my boss, who is the CEO and the creative director for Munich Press, he saw it and he said, why don't we put your names on your book? And it really, so this was just a few months ago this year. But it has been an incremental struggle to agree that I deserve a place in the world and that I can claim my space, and that terrible things aren't necessarily going to happen if I claim my space. It all goes back to my misbelief. So little by little, I have recommended this book several times over the course of these mini talks, but really starting to take yourself seriously, starting to give yourself space for the things that you love, rather than farming yourself out to all the other people. Really, really tiny things. Some of the work that I've done have been as small as, in my life, I never, ever, ever, if there had been two pieces of cake and they weren't exactly the same size, I would never have taken the larger piece. And if there were two that were different and I preferred one over the other, I would never have taken the one I liked if I knew that somebody else in the room liked it. There was never a place in my life where I would have picked me when there was someone else to pick, because that was safer for me. And you have to be compassionate about where you came from. You have to be compassionate about your previous self. Some of this stuff is really hard. So here's another book that I would recommend. I hated all of this vocabulary when I started doing the work, but you need to reparent yourself, and you need to be kind to yourself about the decisions you made in the past, and you need to claim back that real estate of yourself and set boundaries, and know more about your own operating system, your psychological operating system, and what's running you and why it's running you. And so I've been doing that work for decades. I've actually been doing that work for decades. I have known my whole life what I wanted to do. I knew when I was 8, I knew what I wanted to do. And it just took me all this time to claim back these little things. So taking the piece of cake that I like, using the good cutlery, buying myself a bunch of flowers, speaking my mind and not apologizing for it. The thing to do is, if you extend yourself past where you're afraid. I have a thing that I do whenever I go to a beach, a literal thing that I do, and that is to always swim further than my fear. So, there's that point where your feet can't touch the ground, and there are probably sharks, and there are definitely jellyfish. And how far are you going to swim? Well, you're not going to swim past the speedboats, right? Because you're going to get hit by a boat. But how far are you going to swim that you're in your fear, and just push yourself a little bit further? What I've discovered since is that needs to be pretty contained. You can't completely freak yourself out, because if you completely freak yourself out, there's a very good chance that you will go into whatever your modality is for the 4Fs. So freeze, flight, fawn, frolic. Frolic is a euphemism, obviously. And mine are freeze and fawn. They are what I go into when I'm freaking out. So you need to know what your modality is. And once you go into that, your brain has stopped learning, and your brain has you actually have shrunken capacity. Once you go into one of the 4Fs, you have shrunken capacity to do things. So when you're extending your courage, your bravery, you have to do it in places that are manageable for you, for your psyche, for your psychological self, and then just do a little bit more and build and build. It really is like a muscle, and your tolerance for what you can do in the world and how brave you're going to be. You do it even though you are afraid, but not so that you're freaking out. You actually need to do it so you feel okay, so then you'll do it again, because if you freak out and shut down, you're not going to try again. So small steps, little kindnesses, self-compassion. Remember that you came from a place and made decisions that were good for you then, and they are completely fine, and it's okay for you to make different decisions now. And then this is the second question that goes with this. Let me just have a look at the time and make sure I moved into, yeah, we're good for time. So the other is from Debbe Lowery. My most cherished dream of being a prosperous published writer after having many, many birthdays is hidden in a safe place. I know all about that. But I now know it's now or never. I'm glad that the clock is ticking for you. That happened for me too. Do your magic rocks hold the power of perseverance, endurance, and kick butt in spite of paralyzing invisibility? So you just basically described me. There was no one more paralyzed. There was no one more invisible. One of the ways that I got around it was by being a ghostwriter and a book coach. So I did things that were Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. She calls those shadow artist roles. So I was around what I wanted to do, but I wasn't actually the one up front doing it. And eventually that clock, it can be a temporal clock. It can be like, okay, here I am. I've done some of the calculations. I have got how many more good years of brain. I don't come from long-lived people. I come from not particularly long-lived people. And I did the calculation of, am I going to be really, really sharp at 90? Am I going to be really sharp at 80? How much longer do I have to do the things that I am here to do? And I am one of those people who believes that you are here to do something. You are here for a purpose. I know that there is a fashion at the moment to say that it is, you don't need a purpose. You are intrinsically worth everything just by being. And that's a great, great feeling and a great sentiment. But I still believe that I'm here for a purpose, and I believe that I'm here to write books, and I'm here to write certain kinds of books. And I believe in the power of the written word. I believe in the power of the read word. And I believe that you are here to do a certain thing because you want it. It is your most cherished dream. So you need to choose you, and you need to choose you, the writer. And you need to give that space as often as you can, as gently as you can, and as courageously as you can, because it really is now. The time really is now. And if it isn't today, then try again tomorrow. And if it isn't tomorrow, then just get it down to what you can manage and where you can be brave. And if you freak out, find someone safe and go talk to somebody safe. But do it. Absolutely do it, because I believe if this is your most cherished dream, that you are supposed to do this. And I wish you well. All right, let me know if you need more.